Okay, we're up to Nun Beis. We're up to Nun Aleph on the Beis, 2 lines from the bottom. We said that in the Ksuba that a person would redeem his wife, that I have to redeem you, and you will turn to me as my wife. By a kohen, if she was captured, she can't return. So we would say that I will turn you to your land. That's what it would say. So the question is, we saw in Masechta Yevamis that Almana Kohen Gadol, despite the fact that an Almana, a Kohen Gadol, is not supposed to marry an Almana, you would get a Ksuba. So the Gemara there said, what about Mezainis? What about the Tanai Ksuba? Now you can understand in other words, even though it's an Aveira, since Kedushin's Tofes, there'll be a Ksuba. What about the Tanai Ksuba? What about Mezonos? So the Gemara said, I don't understand. We want them to get divorced. We don't want them to stay together. We don't want them supported from the Ksuba. So here's the question. What about redeeming? In other words, the Tanaim of the Ksuba that would not go ahead and have any bearing on them staying together, would you have that or not? In other words, would a Kohen Gadol, if his wife got captured, would he have to be paid to her or not? It's a fascinating shaila. Says the Gemara, Amar Abaya, Almana l'Kohen Gadol, chayav lifdaisa. An Almana l'Kohen Gadol, in fact, he's required to go ahead and redeem her. It's a Tanai in the Ksuba, again, because since she gets a Ksuba, and this is not a Tanai that's necessarily going to keep them together like Mizonos. So this Tanai says Abaya would be in place. Shani Koiraba, because I could go ahead and fulfill the Tanai in the Ksuba, Ubikohenes hadrinich limida nesayach. I would turn you to your land. So therefore, that would apply. Mamzeres in the Sin Yisrael Amid Aleph. How about a Mamzeres in the Sin Yisrael, which is also Chayiv Elavim? Would there be a din of Pediyah? Would the Mamzer have to be paid to his wife? Ein Chayiv Liftaisa, he would not. What's the difference? She'einani Kairaba ve'izvinich li into, and you will turn to me as my wife. In other words, you'll come back, you'll sit to me as your wife. Of course, you can't, because again, there's no Havaya. I mean, there's Kedushin, but you can't stay together. So a big chilik is what? In the Tanai of the Kohen, which is simply not coming back as a wife, but coming back to Eretz Yisrael, to your Jewish people, that you can fulfill by a Manal Kohen Gadol. It says, Abayis Chayil Ftaisa. Masha'en came by Manzeres and Sin Yisrael, where you can't fulfill and you'll return to me and you'll sit to me as your wife. Therefore, what? You would not be able to, you don't have to be paid to her. That's not a time to Ksuba. Rabbi disagrees. Rabbi Amar, Kol she'isur shviya goyrim la. Anytime the isur of capturing causes it, chayiv liftaisa. Isur davar acha goyrim la, ein a chayiv liftaisa. Pirish. When a regular girl gets captured, she's married to a kohen. What causes her not to be able to return to the kohen? It's the fact that she was violated when she was a shvuya, when she was a captive. The shidduch was a fine shidduch. There wasn't a davar achid. There was nothing else wrong with this shidduch. Simply, a problem is she was violated and she can't go back to her husband. But hadrinich lemidasayach, you can return to the land. There you can go ahead and there's a din of pediyah. Masha'en came by a monol kohen gadol. It's true you can fulfill the coming back to the land, but it's a davar acher that's causing you not to stay together. Not the fact that she was violated. Even before she was captured, they couldn't stay together because she's an almana and she can't stay married to a kohen gadol. Says Rava, in that case, where it's an other siba, an other cause that causes you not to be able to take her back as a wife. In that scenario, there is no din of pediyah. So he argues on Baya. He agrees by Mamzeres in the Sin Yisrael. He disagrees what? By Kohen Gadol. Abaya's claim is what? You fulfill the condition. Come back. I'm returning you. We're not married. You're returning. Says Rava, even if it's not the fact that you're violated that you can't come back. It's the fact that you're davaracha, that you're an almana. Then, even though I can fulfill the condition of adrinich l'medina sayich to return into your land, nonetheless, there's no din of pediyah. That's the machloikas between Abaye and Rava. If there's a davar acher that's going, let's see in the lashon again. Rava Omar, kol she'isa shviya goyrim la. So, for example, a kohen married to a girl, the kedusha b'taira, and she's captive in loyalenu, she's violated, then chayav l'ftaisa to fulfill hadrinach l'midasayach. However, issa dava acha goyim loy, when it's an almanul kohen gadol, where you have an extra issa, then ein a chayav l'ftaisa. So he disagrees with Abaya. Leimekit hanoi. Let's suggest the machloikus between Abaye and Rava is in fact a machloikus tanoim. Okay. Now, if a person makes a neder not to have enough from his wife, he naturally has to get divorced. He can't have enough from his wife. He can't live with her. So the following scenario: Hamaderes ishtoi, someone makes a neder not to have enough from his wife, v'nishbeis, and she's captured. Rebbe Eliezer Oimer, Rebbe Eliezer says, Poida, you redeem her, v'nois lo ksuvasam. And you go ahead and you give her a ksuba. Rabbi Yeshua Oimer, nois l'ksubasa, you give her a ksuba, ve'eina poida, and you don't go ahead and redeem her. That's fair rice. Amar Rav Nasan, shalti es sumchis, kishamar Rabbi Yeshua nois l'ksubasa. Rabbi Yeshua says you give her a ksuba, ve'eina poida, and you don't redeem her. Is it speaking kishedirul b'sleif nishbis, where he was muda hana, saying he can't have enough of his wife, he made the vow, and consequently after the vow, then she was captured? Or maybe first she was captured and then he made the neder. I didn't hear. However, it makes sense to say that first he made the neder and then she was captured. If you're going to say that first she was captured and then I'll go make a trick. I'll go make a trick and go say I'll make a neder now and says that I don't have to redeem him. Now my love. B'madar Eishes Kohen. It must be speaking about Eishes Kohen. Now, why would you think it's speaking about Eishes Kohen and not speaking about what? About Abbas Yisrael? Why would you think about that? So look at Rashi. My love b'madar Eishes Kohen. The Kohen shehidar es ishtoi, where Kohen made a neder. The Ibi Yisrael like Amar Rabbi Eliezer Poida. Rabbi Eliezer would not say you could be Poida. You know why? Shari einani kairaba tonight ksuba b'Yisrael v'yisivnech li le'intu. He can't take her back. Fellas, if he made a neder not to take back his wife, if he's a Yisrael, in other words, I'll give you a very good analogy. A violated woman to a Kayin, a woman that you're not allowed to have enough from to a Yisrael. In both cases, you would not be able to fulfill the condition of the Suba to go ahead and come back to me as my wife. So obviously, it can't be that it's speaking about a Yisrael. It must be speaking about an Eishes Kayin where you can fulfill, I'll return you to your land. It's a beautiful diak, guys. It's a beautiful diak. If you're speaking about a regular Yisrael, there's no, it's like a mamza in a sin. It doesn't make any sense that Rabbi Eliezer would hold you could be paidaha. Why? Because the Tanai Ksub is not fulfilled. He can't live with her. He can't live with her because he made a neder. It's the same as what? As an Almanul Kohen Gadol. It's a Davaracha, guys. It's the same as Almanul Kohen Gadol. In other words, the reason I can't live with her has nothing to do with her being captive. The reason I can't live with her is because she is asa to me because I made a neder. Just like the Almanul Kohen Gadol has nothing to do with being captive. It has to do with the Torah said that a Kohen Gadol can't marry an Almana. So now, it must be speaking, guys, what? Where it was what? Eishes Kohen. Good? We've established that. Now, let's go through it outside. Loi Rebbe Eliezer, since you can fulfill what? But since you can fulfill, I'll bring you back to your land. There's a davar acher. I can't stay married to you because of the neder. I don't care. That's like Abaya, guys, by the Almanul Kohen Gadol. Since I can fulfill returning you to your land, even though there's a davar acher, the fact that it's an Almanul Kohen Gadol, do it. Says Rabbi Yeshua, no. Says Rabbi Yeshua, Almanul Kohen Gadol not. For who adin, right? For who adin, mudur hana. You can't, good, you can fulfill returning to your land. But after you return, it's a davar acher causing me not to be able to live with you. So therefore, let's suggest that the machloikas between Abaye and Rabba is the machloikas between Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Nasan. So it says the Gemara, my lab b'madar Eishes Kohen k'miflagi, back inside. They're arguing by Eishes Kohen. Abaye the Amar Rabbi Eliezer. Abaye holds like Rabbi Eliezer, who says Paida, you can be Paida. The Rabba the Amar Rabbi Yeshua, and Rabba says like Rabbi Yeshua. And again, what's the analogy? Guys, there's a davar acher over here why they can't stay married. One, it's either amana, or it's the fact that what? That you can't have ana. Says the Gemara Loi. We're not locked into saying Rav and Abaye is a machlokes tanaim. Guys, in Shas, generally, you want every Amoira to come out according to every Tana. An Amoira does not want to get involved into machlokes tanaim. It's the least thing you want. So the Gemara will always try to figure out an answer to suggest why the Amoira would agree come out according to each one of them. So says the Gemara Loi. The machlokes between Abaye and Rav is not the machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. You know who made the neder? She did. She made the neder. She says, I don't want you to have enough from me. But you know what he did? And he kayim lahu. He was mekayim it, meaning the day he heard it, he didn't say anything. He wasn't made for it. So therefore, he substantiated the neder, but he didn't make it. She did. Rabbi Eliezer Savar, who knows Saint Etzva ben Shineha? It's his fault. He should have been Mefer. Since he wasn't Mefer, he has to redeem her. Rabbi Yeshua Savar, he nasna etzavein shineha. She put a finger literally between her teeth, meaning it's a lashon of it's her fault. Since it's her fault, then she's not. Then he doesn't have to redeem her. But it has nothing to do with what, with davar acher being the cause. Nothing to do with the fact that what the neder is made. Read the Gemara. He nasna etzavein shineha. First of all, if she made the neder and she is the one who is causing the problem, ksubasa mayavirite. Guys, if a woman makes a neder not to have a no, you have to give her ksuba. You don't have to give her ksuba. So what? Why is there a ksuba over here? That's first of all. The su, in addition, Amr Reb Nasan says Reb Nasan, Sha'alti es sumchis. I asked sumchis. Kisha'amar Rabbi Yeshua noisin la ksubasa ve'ena paide kishadir l'seif nishbis. If it's speaking that what? When she made where he made the neder and the end he was captured. He did nadra ihi mali adir l'seif nishbis mali nishbis l'seif adira. L'chayre there's no nafkamina, right? In other words, guys, what are we worried about? That he made the neder after she was captured. We worry about a trick. If she made the neder, then you can't be samech on his trick. There's no nafkamina. In other words, there wouldn't be a nafkamina between when the neder was made. So two reasons why this pshat doesn't work. One, if it's the argument where she made the neder and he substantiated it, then one, why is she getting a ksuba? And Sveitens, why when Reb Nasan he approached Sumchis and tried to make a chilik between whether the captivity preceded the neder or vice versa, if she made the neder, it doesn't make a difference because the whole svara is that if the captivity preceded it and he's making the neder afterwards is to make a trick to get out of it. But if she made the neder, then obviously there's no svara that he made the trick. Ela la'olam the adra ihu. Okay, now, so the adra ihu. So now again, therefore, what? It's machlokes tanoim, correct? What did I tell you guys? We don't want Abaye to not be like Rabbi Yeshua, and we don't want Rava to be like Rabbi Eliezer. We want everyone to be consistent. The Abaye mitaris tamei, the Rava mitaris tamei. Each one will go according to their reasoning to say it's not machlokes tanoim. Abaye mitaris tamei. Now, guys, let's just review. What did Abaye hold? By Amon l'kayin gadol, he has to redeem her, right? Even though what she's also to come back to him. As long as she can come back to the land, even though there's a davar acha goyrim, in other words, she was also even before the violation of being captive. Nonetheless, Amanul Kain Gadol Kuli Amalei Pligi Dechayev Liftaisa. Everyone says Yechayev Liftaisa. Even Rabbi Yeshua would say that Yechayev Liftaisa. Mamzeres Nesina Yisrael Kuli Amalei Pligi De'ein Yechayev Liftaisa. And Mamzeres Nesina, everyone would say you're not Chayev. Why? Because you can't fulfill. And you'll sit next to me as my wife, right? You won't be my wife anymore. You're mamzeret. Mother Eishes Kayin Nami Kuli Amalei Pligi. If a Eishes Kayin, if a man makes a neder, again, an Eishes Kayin Kuli Amalei Pligi the Chayil of Taisa, because you're returning to the land. The Haynu Amanul Kayin Gadol. That's the exact same thing, guys, right? Guys, a neder by a kayin is the same as what as an amanul kain gadol. There's a davar acher, meaning aside from being violated by the captor, you have something else that says they have to get divorced, either the almana or the neder. So kuliyam lepliga that chayil of taisa. That's a bayashita, guys. That a davar acher. Everyone would agree with that. Rabbi Eliezer Oslo bus now. So how does this work out now? Guys, how does this work out? Rabbi Eliezer says you have to be Paida Oslo bus Meikara. He goes at the time at the beginning, before anything, right? Before the captive, you were chayiv to be Paidaha. Since before you're captive to be Paidaha, then you have to be Paida. Later on something happened, I don't care. Rabbi Yeshua Oslo bus B'Saif. And Rabbi Yeshua goes to the end. He looks at the end. Since at the end I can't be paida, therefore what? I can't. So that's the way Abai would go ahead and answer the two. That's the way Abai would work it out. Right. Look at the second wide line, guys. Ki pligi, says Rashi, the mother bein ish eishes kayim. The meikara b'shas tanai, before you made that the tanai, right? Karina Bay Vajrina Machmash Shvia. I can return you when you're captive. I can return you to your land. Ubesoif ik is the davaracher. And in the end, I have an isser. I made a neder. B'chein b'mader Eishes Yisrael meikara Karina Bay v'izvinich into. You can come back as my wife. Ubesoif loy Karina Bay hachi. So in other words, before the davar acher, right? You can come back to the land. Before the davar acher, I could stay married to you. Good. Since there is a beginning to say it would work, says Rabbi Eliezer, you go after the beginning. Says Rabbi Yeshua, no, you go after the end. If the end I can't fulfill, right? Like I can't fulfill it because there's a davar acher goyrim, then it's us. That's the way Abai would learn. Rava metaris tamei. Rava goes according to his reasoning. Amanal kain gadol mamzeres l'sini Yisrael kuliam le'pligi deina chayiv l'v'daisa. Why? Because again, you can't fulfill either one. By the mamzeres, you can't take back as a wife, and by the kain gadol, good, you can return it to the liam. But there's a davar acher karim, not the fact that she was captive. There's something else causing her not to be able to be married to him. Ki pligi b'mater bein eishes kain and bein eishes Yisrael. Machloikis is, but when whether a kohen or a Eish Yisrael makes the Azal Basa Meikara, the Beshua Azal Basa B'Saif. Okay, so either one, they're going to come out. What do you go after? If you go after the beginning, since the beginning of Tanai, you can fulfill it, whether you can fulfill returning to the land or you can fulfill returning to a life. The end you can't. Rabbi Eliezer says you go after the beginning. And Rabbi Yeshua goes after the end. So Machlokes between Abai and Rava is not necessarily Machlokes Tanoim. Each one could go ahead and work their way out of it. The Mishnah said, Nishbis Chayil of Doisa. Right. Nishbis Chayil of Doisa, the Mishnah said. And if, okay, says the Gemara. Tanrabanan. Nishbis B'chaye Baila. The husband's alive when she's captured. The Akach Meis Baila, and then the husband dies. Does the estate have to redeem her? So Hikaba Baila. Yarshim Chayil L'Toisa. If the Baal before he died recognized the fact that she was captured already, then therefore he has a chiyuv. Lo Hikaba Baila, even though she was captured before he died, but he wasn't aware of that fact, and therefore Ein Yarshim Chayil L'Toisa. That's the Tanakama. Levi's of the opinion, Lemevet Uvda, to do according to this psak, that whether since the Baal didn't recognize, then he wouldn't be Chayil L'Poida. Rav said to Levi, Chavivi was Reb Chia. That was a lashon of beloved. He was his father, Rav's father's brother. He was Rav's uncle. And he said, "Less hilchasa ki hamas nisan." Allah is not like that brisa. Ella kiha ditnan. That was Tosefta. Nishbes la'acha misas baila. If she's captured after he died. Eina Yisrael Mechayim L'V'Daisa L'Yoid Elafilu Nishbis B'Chayi Baila. If she was captured not after the death, but she was captured before the death, and the Achkach Meis Baila, and then he died, right? Eina Yisrael Mechayim L'V'Daisa. Why? She'eina Ni Kairaba V'Yizvinich L'Intu, and then you'll come back to me as my wife. So whether Hikaba or Lo Hikaba, you don't have to be Paida. So Rav said to Levi, don't act upon whether you recognize the fact or they didn't recognize the fact. you don't have to go ahead and be paid, because again, what's the t'nai of the ksuba, guys? I'll be paid to you and you'll come back to me as my wife. Nishbase, captured. They wanted 10 times the worth, right? 10 times the worth. Pamri shoyna paida, mikan ve'elech, ratza paida, ratzeina paida. You don't have to paida more than once. Rav Shimon Gamliel Oimer on the base. Rav Shimon Gamliel is of the opinion, ein paidin es hashvuyin yoyse al kedei b'mehem, right? If they tikkun oilam, you don't want to go ahead and incentivize people to go ahead and capture. Why? Because they're just going to go ahead and you don't deal with terrorists, guys. Right? That's the bottom line. You don't deal with terrorists. The same. There's not. Ein chodesh tachas hashemesh. Tikkun oilam. You're not going to deal with terrorists. Ha bichdei demeyem mashma. More than the worth you don't, but the worth itself you would. Even if, let's say the ksuba is 200 tzuz and they want 300 tzuz, right? Mashma, you would go ahead, right, and do it. If her worth is 300 tzuz, you would do it. Urimin al esu estira, nishpeis v'hayim mevakshim mimenu arasara b'ksubasa, pam yishoyna paida mikam ve'elech ratza paida ratzena paida. Reb Shimon Gamliel Oimer, im hayer pekoina kineged ksuba. If the value of the captive, the redeemer, is equal to the ksuba, not more, but equal to, then paida, im laveinu paida. So l'chayra, one place it says even more, the other place says the same amount. It says Reb Shimon Gamliel trey kulias. Like Reb Shimon Gamliel has two kulas. What's his two kulas? Right? What's the two kulas? If the two kulas for him, right? If the price of redemption is more than her worth, even if it's less than the ksuba, you don't redeem her. If right, the first one, what did I say? I lost my train of thought. If the two, what are the two coolest? Okay, the Shimon has two coolest. He would not be chayav to be paid to her more than her worth, that even if what, it's less than the ksuba. So let's say the ksuba was, let's say her worth was 100, right? Her worth was 100, and they want 150, and a ksuba is 200. You wouldn't have to be paid to her. You wouldn't have to be paid to her. And if let's say though she's worth 300, and they're asking for 300, but since it's more than kasuba, then you wouldn't have to be paid. So either way, if it's more than her worth, even though it's less than the kasuba, or if it's her worth, even if it's more than the kasuba, either way, we let you off the hook. As long as you get one more, guys, one more in the male part, or one more in the kasuba part will get you out. The two coolest according to Shimon and Gamliel. Laksa chayiv l'faisa. If she gets a disease, then you chayiv to pay and pay the doctor bills. Tan Rabbana. Almana nizonis mnichse yisaymim. Almana will be supported from the nechasim of the yisaymim. But tzricha refuah harihikim mizaynis. Right? It comes from mizaynis, just like you chayiv to feed her, you chayiv to go ahead and pay the doctor bills. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Oimer refuah sheyesh la kitzva. It's a refuah. I'm learning I'm learning with a sheet and gubetzes. Refuah, that's a set amount. In other words, the doctor has set an amount. Then the sarpepes and the ksubasa. Then you don't go to the mezainis, guys. You go to the ksuba itself. In other words, you take it out of her pocket. You don't take it from the state. You take it from her pocket, from the ksuba itself. That's when it's a set amount for the doctor bills. She'ein lo kitzva. If there's not a set amount, it could be ongoing. Harihikim mezainis. Then what? Then it's like mezainis, and it'll be taken from the estate. So it depends. In other words, this din that you pay for refuah would depend. It depends if it's what a doctor bill set amount, or you didn't set an amount. If you set an amount, it's from the ksuba. If it's not a set amount, then it's from the estate, from the zaynis. Rabbi Yochanan, asu causes dam be'eretz Yisrael kirefuah shein lo kitzva. It was commonplace to go ahead and if they would bloodlet, they did that all the time. So that's a dava shein lo kitzva. That you would go ahead and get from the mezainis and not from the ksuba. Now, Kreiba de Rabbi Yochanan, the relatives of Rabbi Yochanan, Havilu Isis Abba, they had a widow. They had a widow of their father. And she needed, it was a davashin lekitzva, and she was eating away at the estate. Because we said a davashin lekitzva is like mezainis. So it was a chronic illness, and she was really eating away at the estates. So Aslam came to Rabbi Yochanan, they want to know what to do. Amalu, he told them, Azilu katzla midi l'roife. Go get the doctor to go ahead and set a price. In other words, I'm going to go ahead and set a price. So what do we say? If it's a set price, then you go from the Kesuba guys. Then you go out from the Kesuba, not the estate. And then it'll be her problem, not your problem. So I'm Rabbi Yochanan, I made myself like a lawyer. In other words, he was having regret that he used his superior intellect in halacha to go ahead and get them off the hook. myself. Now, why did he hold in the beginning to get them off the hook? And what was the regret he felt? So from your own flesh and blood, you shouldn't go ahead and close your eyes. So he felt their relatives, he's going to help them out. An Adam Chashiv like himself should not get involved in this. So that was okay. So just a play on what occurred over here. Okay, so now we've been through the sugya. We know there's something called a ksuba, which is 100 for an amana, 200 for what? For a psula. We know there's a tosefes ksuba that the husband would bring into the marriage, that he adds on to ksuba, giving more. We know there's a dowry written into ksuba called an adunya, that the father of the bride would write into ksuba to entice men to marry his daughter. That's called an adunya. Then there's different tanoim in the ksuba, that she's provided from the estate, that if the husband dies, she'll be provided from the estate, as long as she doesn't collect the ksuba. I said the other day, right? As long as she doesn't collect the ksuba, she'll be provided from the estate. The girls are provided from the estate up to a certain time. Now, we spoke at something very interesting, the following. You're a father, you want your daughter to get married. You're going to give a nice dowry. Here's the problem. If your daughter predeceases the husband, right? The husband's going to go ahead and remarry. He might have other children. Whatever you went over, your husband's going to go ahead and inherit from his wife. And goodbye, as they say in the old days, goodbye, Dolly Gray. It's gone. Forget about it. It's gone. I think it was Lindsay Nelson who used to say that. Goodbye, Dolly Gray, one of the original announcers of the Mets. Anyway, so why would a person do that if he'd lose it? So the Chachamim came up with a great takana. It's called Kesuvos Banim Dichrin, that the sons will inherit the ksuba of their mother. The sons will inherit the ksuba of their mother, and thus there's nothing to worry about. He's going to write it in ksuba. She will get married. He'll have the nedunya. And in fact, if she dies, her children, meaning his grandchildren, will inherit it. So therefore, that would go ahead and incentivize the father of the bride to give a good nedunya. We spoke that out, and this is the Mishnah that deals with it. Okay? And in fact, if you didn't write it, it's like we said, like Tar Cipher. We're going to say that it's if it's written. Says the Mishnah. If you didn't write in the Kesuba, male children that will be from me to you, they will inherit your Kesuba. If the husband did not write this in, Yeser al Chulkin the im achuin, more than the chelik with their brothers, meaning if I die, right, they're going to get what you brought in more than their brothers, meaning from another marriage. If they didn't write it in, right? Chayev. Why? Shu T'nai Bezdin. Like we said the other day, if Misoidis is missing, T'nai Bezdin. If Amana is missing, T'nai Bezdin. All T'nai Bezdin. Bon and Nukfin. Female girls. Well, that's redundant. Females. The have it that they'll have from me to you. You have a Yasmin Bebesi. They'll sit in the house. And they'll eat from the estate until they're taken by a man. If you didn't write that in, again, this is what we call mezainis, guys. Chayev, he'd be chayev to do it. Why? Shoot tonight, Bezdin. Ate yasve bebesi. This is now for the almana. You will sit in my house. Umitzani min chasai kol yemei mega al musayich. all the days megar that extends, that keeps on going, your widow, as long as you don't collect ksuba, the basic chayiv, you'll be chayiv. Shoot tonight bezdin. Okay, so we have 3 tanoim in this mishnah. 1, the Kesuvos banim dichrin. 2, mizainis, and 3, the woman, the almana being supported from the estate. Kachoya anshe Yerushalayim kaisvin. As we just mentioned, this is what they would write. Anshe Golo hoya kaisvin, kanshe Yerushalayim. The people who lived in the north, the Galilee, they wrote the same as Anshe Yerushalayim. However, anshe Yehuda hoya kaisvin, you'll stay and eat from the estate, you almana, anshe Yiratzu Yoshim litin lecha Kesuvosayach, until the Yarshim decide they don't want you anymore, and they'll give you a Kesuba. They can go ahead and force the issue. They can go ahead, give it a Kesuba, say goodbye, Dali, great, goodbye. No, that's it, finished. So in Yerushalayim, in the Galil, no. You, as long as you want to stay, the Meshach, the Megar, Amun Nesayich, as long as you want to remain Almana, you don't want to collect the Kesuba and remarry, you're good, right? You could stay. Says in Yehuda, they said no. In Yehuda, it's all up to the kids. The kids want to get rid of you, they can get rid of you. Why? By giving you the ksuba. Once you get the ksuba, clearly you don't get mezainis. Once you get the ksuba, you do not get mezainis. Why do they go ahead and institute the Kesuvos banim dichrin? You guys know this very well. That a man should go ahead and jump to go ahead and write for his daughter like his sons. Right? Now, this is coming at the expense of his male children. By giving a dowry, obviously, they're going to be less to Yarshin, his kids, because you're writing it to your daughter, and your daughter's marrying somebody else. Right? The son would inherit it. And Barta Loitiris, the daughter would inherit it. The Yasurabanan, Umetakne, the Teris Barta, and the Chacham came along, and they said that the girl should go ahead and inherit it, meaning by writing this into the Ksuba, you're taking away from your kids. Hanami Daraisi says, well, it's not a problem, it's also Daraisa. Dichsiv, Kichu Nashim, Volidu Banim, Ubanais. Take a wife, have male children and female children. Ukuchula Benechem Nashim, and take for your sons women, and your daughters to give to men. Now, Bishlema Bonim, Bishlema for boys, Biyade Kaime, to go ahead and take women. Ella bin Binsei Mikaime Biyade. It's the derech for a man to go out to get a woman. It's not the derech for a woman to go get a man, at least in those days, right? It wasn't the derech for a woman to go get a man. And therefore, so how would you accomplish that? The Torah says, go ahead and take a man for your woman, for your girl. How could you do that? Says, you know, you do it. The nalbisha, you give her nice clothing. The kapsila, the yasi nasrullah, and you give her a big dowry that people will jump at the chance to marry her. Good. That's what it is. So it's the raisa. Biad kama abai v'rabban. I'm not sure about you at leisa nichsei. Up to what? Up to the nichsei. Up to 1/10 of the nechasim. Okay. Now, the guys, they're collecting 2 things. They're collecting the nidunya. They're also collecting the ksuba. So they'd be collecting, guys, watch this. A man goes ahead, he gives his daughter into marriage, and with this, and he writes the Kesuvos banim dichrin, his wife dies, right? They collect the ksuba, right? That they collect the ksuba. Not only they collect the nidunya of the ksuba, they collect the 200 if she was a basula or the mana. Fred the Gemara, if the whole thing was to incentivize to marry, why in the world would they go ahead and collect the 200 or the 100? It's enough just to collect the nidunya. Let them collect what the father gave, and let the Baal keep his ksuba, right? They're collecting. This guy, if he marries the second time, is going to have 2 ksubas. The first one and the second one. Fred the Gemara Kasha, the Eimer the Avliris, let's say what the father gave in the dowry, they should collect. The Baal loyliris, but what the Baal gave, meaning the Baal is giving the 200, not the father, let him keep it. Why do they get that 200? Guys, you got the Kasha? It's a good, you know, it's all logical, right? The whole reason that This guy is basically saying, marry me, and guess what? And if you die, it's going to cost me big time. Why? Not only don't I get the nedunya that you brought into the marriage, I'm going to have to pay the ksuba. But 1 second, the nedunya was simply that I should marry you in the first place. So that I'm willing to give away. But the 200, if you were a basula, why should I give that away? That's the Gemara's kasha. It's a great kasha. And for the Gemara, Im Kain, Av Nami Mimnav Leikosev. The father's going to reason the following. If this guy is not benevolent, he's not willing to give up his ksuba, I got to worry, about the nedunya as well. I got to worry, period. I'm only going to go ahead and give with my generous hands if he's generous as well. That's basically what the teretz is. So therefore, that's why he has to give the ksuba. The kosev av, right? When the father gives the ksuba lichtay bal, hechad le kosev av le lichtay bal. Maybe, when does he have to give ksubas banim dichrin? Only if there's what is a nedunya, a dowry. What happens? There's no dowry. Why would he have to go give the kids the money? Says, well, I plug Rabbanan. The Rabbanan did not make a distinction in the ksuba. Every ksuba has written it ksubas banim dichrin, because most father-in-laws give a dowry. You'll have one that didn't, and you wanted to marry this girl anyway. Tough. You're going to have to. You will not. If you marry, you still have to give ksuba to these children born. Now, let's say you got married. There was an adunya. You only had a girl. You remarried, and you have boys. What's the din? Everything goes to your boys. The girl doesn't get it. Fred the Gemara. Bas bein habonim nami tiris. Let the bas bein habonim also inherit. If the whole thing was to incentivize, why limit it to male children, even female children? And for the Gemara, kinach l'shavi Rabbanan. The Rabbanan said the lashon is lashon of Yerusha. If you look at the lashon of the Mishnah, b'nei bani dichrin dehavilechi minoi inun yarsin kesef. Yarsin means to inherit. If it's a boy and a girl, the girl doesn't inherit. So therefore, since they made it the lashon of Yerusha, the girl doesn't inherit, only the boys. Now, bas bein abonos tiares, pirish. You got your first girl, your first wife had a girl. She died. You married, and you had 2 more girls. So now there's no boys. Let the first girl inherit the whole ksuba, and not split it up. It says the loy plug Rabbanan. The Rabbanan made a loy plug, meaning a girl does never inherit the total ksuba. So she'll inherit, but with the other 2, they'll divide up the 2 ksubas. They'll divide it up. Why ksubas banadichin? Let's collect from the talcum as well. And for the Gemara, ksuba shavi Rabbanan. The Gemara made like ksuba, just like a ksuba is only paid from the karka, so too only ksubas banadichin is only from karka. For the Gemara, titr from the b'shabdei, just like a ksuba, there's a lien on the ksuba to go ahead, and if it's sold, she can collect it. So also banim dichrin, if it's sold, they should be able to collect it. And if the Gemara yarsin tanan, it's Yerusha, and if a Yerusha you can't collect from Nishubadim, you can't collect from those lands. For the Gemara, ve'ema afal gav deleka moisa dinar. Okay. We didn't learn this yet. A little later on, fellas, the only time this ksubas banim dichrin is when there's, after the ksubas are divided, there's something left over, itoris Yerusha. So if you have 2 ksubas, one of 200, one of 200, and you have a dinar left over, then there's the ksubas banim dichrin. If there's no dinar left over, then they divide the 2 between them. Fred the Gemara, why is that? The ema afagav beleka moisa dinar, even there's not a leftover dinar, the mokum says, and for the Gemara, the mokum the kama akra nachla daraisa like the kin rabbanim. When we're going to be oike nachla daraisa, meaning that you're saying that these inherit, when they're all sons and they should inherit, that we don't say it. When will we say it? They're not being oika daraisa, because in that dinar, guys, in that 1 dinar, they're all dividing. So they're all inheriting in the dinar, right? Very geschmack. Mashen Kain, where it's across the board, there's splitting, that's not inheritance. So the makam that you're oika and nachla daraisa, like the kin rabbanan. Okay, we'll stop over here. Okay, the share will have to be tomorrow night. I'll post time and location. Thank you so much for listening.